My name is Robert Nerney.
And I'm Jason Pacheco.
And we're your hosts of Road to Real Estate, a podcast about real estate, small business, and the independent spirit.
Today's guest is John Dolbec, a very well-known mortgage loan officer in Rhode Island. John, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
Yeah, thanks to be a guest here, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate
Janice, thanks for sponsoring the podcast.
it. Thank you very much.
Sponsor. Props to support.
Good.
Right, John, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into mortgage use?
Yeah, so let's see again. So grew up mostly in Rhode Island. I went to the military when I was younger, and then studied business management, went to Johnson & Wales, and then happened to fall into mortgages. I dipped out of a midterm. It was Human Resources 4001 class, and I raced down to Middletown, Rhode Island to take my first interview for like a business development role at a mortgage company. And I was 5 minutes late. I'm hardly late to anything. Jason can tell you that. And I got basically hired on the spot. As soon as I could finish my schooling, I was able to start at the mortgage company as a business development rep. And then about a year into that role, that program was disbanded. And they said, hey, congratulations, you're going to get promoted to become a loan officer. Go take your test. You're now on 100% commission. And so at that time, I was married and had a little daughter, and I just had no way of looking back. I had to go out there and go start selling some loans. And so here I am.
That was in Rhode Island?
That wasn't Rhode Island. That was about 2013 or so.
So that first role was what was it? You said it was business relationship kind of thing?
Yeah, it was like a business development. So I used to go out there and help out real estate agents with their marketing towards their open houses, anything that we could do to help build business for them. Any social media training. We even took classes on how to take pictures of their listings. Mm-hmm. So that way we can go and help them. A lot of houses at that time, people didn't have photographers. They would just go and do the photography on their own with their smartphones and stuff like that. So they would actually teach classes and help people learn how to, take their own pictures.
Yeah, so those early stages as a brand new loan officer, what did your day kind of look like?
So you're talking about like now, or
let's start back then. So the early stages of you trying to get things going.
So when I first went to go get things going, I didn't know anything about mortgages at that time, and quite honestly, I never did sales before. I worked in restaurants before I got into mortgages in the military, and so this role was all pretty new to me. It was just something that was going to pay the bills right out of college, and so when it first started, I was basically just said, hey, go online and try to find real estate agents and, call them and see if they'll take a meeting with you. And so I did. And there was quite a few times where I took a meeting, I had no idea what I was doing, and I got asked some pretty interesting questions, and I didn't know the answers to. And I would say I would look them up, but I remember a couple of times where I was actually just asked to leave a meeting.
Oh, wow.
I was like, hey, see you later. Like, You don't know what you're doing. Get out of here. But that was all just learning experiences that made me better at what I do now.
That's fortitude, though. You kept going. It didn't deter you.
I didn't have an option,
Well, you felt like you didn't, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I just had to keep on finding a way to make it go. Because most of the time, it was emotionally, it sucks when you get, kicked out of an office, but it usually is too good to do.
So yeah, those first stages, let's say you're just trying to get in front of realtors. Mm-hmm. And now, how has it shifted from then till what's a typical day look like for you in your role today?
Well, I will say, one of the things in sales that I didn't know then that I know now is to qualify a prospect, right? And so whether it's a business-to-business prospect or a client, trying to figure out what their goals are and where they stand is important. When I first started, anybody that had a real estate license I'd reach out to. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys know there's 9,000 licensees in Rhode Island, and it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the business is happening by the top 20%. So I would hang out with somebody that just really didn't have any business to give at that time, and I spent a lot of time doing that. And some cases it did work out, where built a good relationship and, it was the right person, and they did have a fire in the belly and they have been successful. But there was also other times where a lot of those real estate agents aren't in the business anymore, and they, it just never really panned out. So working smarter, not harder, was important. And that was something I didn't fully get how to do when I first got started.
How long did that take, though, before you said, okay, I got to change this? I got to change my focus?
Well, Well, I would say it took a while because it was almost like a spray and pray type of mode to where I would just reach out to everybody and somebody would have something. So it was just working harder, not smarter, but it was still turning into benefits. But then once I realized to work with people that I actually enjoyed working with, that were also had a fire in their belly to be successful, that wanted to, that had aspirations to go out there and see this as a full-time career, that I realized that those are the people I need to be hanging out with, that I want to hang out with.
It's cool.
That we're going to enjoy being in partnership with.
Yeah, that's cool.
So normal day now, yeah. So, I'd say the phone never stops. Any service industry nowadays, you're connected to your phone pretty much 24/7. But usually what's happening is getting up in the morning, going through emails, make sure that all the stuff in the pipeline, all the people that are in the contract, everything's moving as smoothly as possible at that point, before anybody even gets in the office. But what I'm normally doing first thing in the morning after I'm checking the emails is actually going into the loan software and pulling the credit reports and reviewing the files for anybody that's like submitted information over the weekend or overnight. From there, setting up appointments with them. I want to say I should actually be sponsored by Calendly, by how much I talk about Calendly. You know that. Yeah. But I've been using Calendly for, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years now. And just on my Saturday morning quiet times when I go to the office, I just started working on my systems. And Calendly was one of those first things that I really got quiet with and said, all right, if I'm going to have an introductory phone call with clients, I'm saying that all the time, I should make a calendar appointment book available for when people can book introductory phone calls. The next one was mortgage consultations. And, when can people actually schedule a time to meet with me to go over their loan application? Because that takes more time than an introductory phone call. And so usually I'm reviewing their files and then I'm sending out an email with the link to schedule that mortgage consultation. 9 times out of 10 nowadays, it's through Zoom. But then, from doing that, it's maybe a little bit of prospecting to marketing. And then usually in the afternoons, it's filled up with those mortgage consultations via Zoom. And then usually again at the end of the day, if anybody's filled out applications throughout the day, I'm checking before the end of the day as well. And then as you know, I do a good amount of networking. So I want to say I average about 1 networking event a week that I go to, usually more. But I'm normally heading out the door and heading to a networking event.
Yeah, I think knowing you for a good 7 years now, you're one of the most system people that I know, which is good. But you love to just simplify, make it a system, so it just kind of all works out and everyone gets the same level of customer service.
Yeah, it's like making an assembly line for, your business, kind of like a car. But, the first step, having that phone call, second step, submitting the information, third step, having that consultation, pre-approval, loan application, under contract. It's making it simple so that way you can repeat it over and over again. Each client has a different story to tell, and you listen to that and you understand it. Each loan is a little bit different with whatever their qualifying situation is. Property is different, but whatever you can control to keep in the simple, systematic view, that it's going to make everybody's life a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And how do you prospect? When you said prospect, what do you mean by that?
Well, I would say that a lot of the times when I'm reaching out to people, the way I actually prospect is a lot through social media. So keep in mind, when I came into the industry, I didn't know anybody. I had no sales acumen. And the cold calling business partners to try to get meetings with them, if you're lucky, you get a meeting, but it's still kind of a rough meeting because they don't really have any rapport with you. What I realized at that time was, if you go into a networking event, whether it's a dinner or I'm a big part of the Young Professional Network Group of Rhode Island Association of Realtors. I'm still in that committee. I'm probably too old for it now. But I would go to those events, and then that's where I'd be able to strike up conversation, build rapport with somebody. And then I'd be able to then find them on social media and then reach out and say, hey, it was nice to meet you. We should get together soon. And that's where a lot of the networking has happened, and a lot of the prospecting has happened is through social media nowadays. People still have phone numbers. Yes, you can find the phone number and reach out, but I feel like if you send somebody a message through social media, they're going to stalk you at that point, and they're going to see whether or not they like you or they don't like you, or they might see that you reached out, look you up, and then realize that they met you at an event somewhere. So that prospecting typically happens through social media, more so than just randomly calling somebody. I don't know about you guys. I don't like a random phone call. Like that just, I'm in the middle of doing something. I like to think, so if I see somebody calling me, I don't feel like I want to get back to them. But if there's a message there, you got to sit on the couch later on that night, you might get back to them then.
Mm-hmm. And you're also really good at networking. Speak about that a little bit, about how people can use networking the wrong way, the right way, and how do you go into a networking event? What's going on, everyone? So you already know, right? If I'm not podcasting, I'm in real estate, and I need someone to help my clients get a mortgage, get a house, right? And I got John Dolbec. He's crushing it. He's got a team called a Modern Team over at Primary Residential Mortgage. So if you want to get pre-approved and buy your first home, reach out to John Dolbec and his team. Call or text. It's 401-321-4401. That's 401-321-4401. Back to the show.
Yeah, so I'd say networking is more for the long game. And, it's pretty funny. A couple of years ago, I realized that I was going into a Board of Realtors Christmas party at the Marriott Providence. And as I was walking in, there was a bunch of people saying hi to me. And some people, quite honestly, I didn't know who they were. But I remember that was probably one of the first events I went to. And when I first got started, and I walked in, I didn't know anybody. I was nervous about walking in that room because I didn't know, who anybody was, what was going to happen. And then, so it's cool to see the role kind of reversed and to where a lot of people knew who I was. Going into like kind of networking tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, I would say what I've learned is, number one, be genuine. I've seen a lot of people go to networking events and not want to go back, but those are usually the person that would walk in and say, hey, do you have any people that that I should go buy a house with, like I can help right now, or that send me some business, basically. And I think that's where you just rub people the wrong way. Another part of being genuine too is, like, a lot of times I've gone to like classes and seminars, and if you're part of that class trying to learn, if you're in there and you're genuinely trying to learn with the people that you're trying to learn with, you're going to build up better rapport than just going in and acting as like a sponsor, or just act like you don't care because you're not there to learn that particular subject. You're just there to get business. I've seen people do that as well. Mm-hmm. On that networking side, yeah, it's important to follow up. But like I said, it's important to build those genuine relationships and, then follow up with people more so than just go and ask somebody, hey, can I sell you a house today?
Yeah. And now, have you, throughout the course of your career, have you found that you got lost in networking, going too many times for the social? Or, because I know that happens a lot. People go out, free drinks, and it's more of a let's hang out. Do you see that often? Do you see people network the wrong way?
I see people network the wrong way, and I do think that, it's people are just not they're not networking in the right pool, I would say, mm-hmm. Right? Like, you're a real estate agent. You go to a real estate agent networking event, you're going to be surrounded by other real estate agents. It's there more for you to kick back, relax, and party, right? As a loan officer, we get our business from real estate agents, so we want to be in that sphere. But if I was a real estate agent, I probably wouldn't be at the real estate agent networking events all the time. I'd probably be finding the Small Business Association networking events. I'd be finding the Builders Association networking events. Anything along those lines. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you would get the bang for the buck. But I feel like the real estate agent events is so prevalent, and then they're pushed by the boards to where the real estate agents go, but then they're like, well, why am I going to go to this again? I'm not getting much out of this. Well, yeah, it's
right.
It's not more, and it's good to network with other real estate agents in the state. You never know where that next deal is going to come from. If someone's not licensed for Rhode Island, they just came from Connecticut or something like that. But that's going to be few and far between. I'm on the board for the Rhode Island Mortgage Bankers Association, and it's funny because I don't see a lot of loan officers there. Where are they? They're at the realtor events. They're not going to the loan officer events. So I think that's where a lot of times people are networking in the wrong way.
All right, John, thank you. Can you break down the mortgage process from pre-approval to closing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say you can start before the pre-approval sign. I'd say, it starts at that initial handoff, right? So a lot of times when I talk to a client for the first time, I'm going through the who, what, where, when, and whys. And so the first part is that who did you hear about me from? All right, well, heard about you from Rob. Well, how do you know Rob? And I think that's important to automatically help me learn how that person knows you. If it's in your sphere of influence, there's going to be a lot of trust there. And it's a little bit different compared to somebody that's you just found on the street that barely knows your name, because then I'm going to have to spend more time edifying you. Where if it's somebody that's close to you, I don't need to edify. They already know you. They already like you. They trust you. They're going to listen to you. But beyond that, it goes into the steps of their actual goals. Where are they actually looking to buy? Because that's going to make a difference on if they're looking in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, or Connecticut, and they're a first-time home buyer, there's going to be different loan programs available to them. In Rhode Island, a couple of years ago, there was a Rhode Island housing product that was different in different cities and towns, too. So it's important to know where it's almost exactly they're looking in some cases. But how much are they looking to buy for? It's good to get those budgets. A lot of times they don't even know. What do they expect their monthly payment to be? A lot of times, again, they don't know. So it's good to ask that question there. Because sometimes they will tell you. And it's great because you know that they've already done some homework. But if they haven't, then you want them to start thinking about that. Their idea for down payment. Because they might have 20% down, they might not have a penny saved. So it's good to get that gauge before having them get to that consultation part. Then you have that introductory phone call. After that introductory phone call, that's when they'll normally fill out the information online. 9 times out of 10 people are filling out the information online nowadays. It should take about 15 minutes to fill out an application. We're going to do a hard credit check most of the times. In some cases, it doesn't make sense, and there is possibilities to do soft inquiries. But most of the time, you're just going to do a hard inquiry, so that way you get all the data, and everything is 100% accurate. From there, they'll normally upload their documents as far as their tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. If they're divorced, their divorce decree, if they own a house, a mortgage statement, things like that. But during that mortgage consultation part, that's where I kind of differ from everywhere else, because most of the time, other lenders are just looking at those documents on their own and then sending the client a pre-approval letter based on whatever goals they talked about. When I do that mortgage consultations through Zoom, and that's when I'm sharing my screen with somebody, and I'm going through showing them their actual credit report, showing them the actual interest rates, all the different interest rates, all the different cost per points, all the different loan programs, how much they qualify for, monthly payments, cash to close, what the closing costs are and what they mean. And I'm talking all the way as far as the daily interest charges. So if you close on the last day of the month, your daily interest charge could be, $100, let's say. That's your per diem interest. But if you close on the first day of the month, that charge right there could be all the way up to $3,100. And so that's a $3,000 swing. So showing somebody that there could be a $3,000 swing in their closing cost helps them understand and comprehend that these numbers aren't set in stone. And that's important, especially to a first-time homebuyer. But once they have all that information, then that's when they go out shopping with you guys. They go look at homes. I would say when my day starts, it's when somebody's looking at a house and they text me, "Hey, John, how much would this house cost?" And they'll ask me for different price points and payments and stuff. So I'm normally doing that on a day-to-day basis, just running numbers for people so that way they know. But once they go and they put an offer in, then that's when, I meet with them again to do a quicker Zoom call, but a loan application review meeting, I call it. This is a different calendar link. And I'm taking a quick look at their contract with them, looking at the house through online pictures, going through, hey, here's going to be the game plan with the different loans. How much money are they putting down? What loan program are we doing? What's that estimated cash to close? And then we're just kind of getting the ball ready for processing and underwriting. So once I have that meeting with them, that's when my operations team will send out their loan disclosures, which are usually about 50 pages worth of documents for them to e-sign. But that's when they're also doing their home inspection, their appraisal, underwriting, processing. So, we stay in touch the whole way through the process. But, that's where more of the operations team handles a lot of the stuff as far as getting any other updated documents that they need and everything. But I feel doing those Zoom calls are what I've learned that take the most pressure off of people's shoulders. Mm-hmm. And you can almost see the weight off of somebody's shoulders when they have that mortgage consultation, because now they finally know everything. There's a lot of times where people will come to me and they have no clue. They've never had anybody in their family buy a house before. They don't know what they're doing. And when I explain it, and I've explained it thousands of times over again, they comprehend it and they feel that they are more comfortable with where they stand at everything.
Yeah, off the top of your head, you had an idea of what the most common question you get or that you have to correct?
It varies so much. A lot of times when I have that initial phone call and I start to explain that I'm going to have to pull credit, I explain to people that a credit inquiry is typically going to cost them 2 to 5 points of their credit score. It's not going to make their credit score drop 100 points. And I feel like I've just gotten in such a habit of coming up with that objection first, just so that way, they don't feel like, oh, I'm not going to fill out the application because I'm afraid of my credit being impacted. And a lot of times if I'm talking to somebody, they will kind of blur out, oh, well, I just talked to this bank last week. Well, great. But, if they pulled your credit, you have a 45-day window to shop around according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Or consumerfinance.gov is the website. And I'll actually send people the links sometimes. Just so that way they can see it, they can, trust me.
Right, so if credit's pulled, they have 45 days to have a few more pulls because they're shop around.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Within the same industry, not go shop for a car, a house, a credit card.
Yeah.
But, so I'll explain that to them too, just because a lot of times people are hesitant on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Okay, how should someone prepare financially before applying for a mortgage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think they should just come and talk to me first, because everybody's situation is different. Everybody has something going on, and I can look at it with them. Now, during that pre-approval stage, I meet with people for a consultation, whether they have a 400 credit score or an 850 credit score, whether they have a job, they don't have a job, and so that's where I'm really able to show people, hey, here's where you stand and here's why. Here's the resources I can give you at that time in order to get ready. But if somebody was going to just listen to this today and then think, all right, well, I just locked into a 12-month lease, not going to talk to John right now, they should almost be acting as if. And what I mean by that is acting as if they have a mortgage payment of, whatever they think that their budget's going to be for that next house. If they think it's going to be $3,000, but they're only paying $2,000 a month for rent right now, they should be acting as if they're paying $3,000 a month for a mortgage, and then taking that extra $1,000 and putting that towards savings or putting that towards paying down other debts. Now, again, this is where I kind of think that they should talk to me now, because they could be taking that extra $1,000 and putting it towards something that's maybe minimal impact, where I could advise them, and maybe it's something that I see that, hey, maybe you should put it just towards, your savings. Paying down that little bit of a debt that you have isn't doing much. Or maybe they're paying off student loans, which student loans do take an impact on your debt to income ratio, but oftentimes a lot less than what people think. So again, I think talking to me first is going to be a big thing, so that way I can advise them properly. Because a lot of times people just think that they're doing the right thing when they're really not.
Yeah, do you see any emerging trends in the mortgage space right now with AI maybe or anything like that?
No, not necessarily. I think there's talks of that stuff coming down the pipe, but realistically, I think everybody's using AI to kind of clean up emails and their social media posts and maybe get ideas for what to post. But I don't see that quite taking over people's jobs or anything like that. I don't trust social media, AI to do the mortgage consultations or anything like that yet. I heard of tools that will listen to my phone calls enough, learn what I'm saying, so that way I don't have to take those initial phone calls. But I've learned I need to take those initial phone calls. I need to know what those initial goals are and what somebody's almost pulse is for how nervous they are. So that way I know how to help them.
Right, and that's a turnoff. And that would get a turnoff for a potential buyer.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's a person, say, I want to buy a house, I want to talk to you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what about interest rates, John? What are interest rates doing lately?
Well, I just looked that up a little while ago, and according
to was going to be asked
7.02%. What did you say?
I said, did you know that was going to be asked?
I did.
The interest rate question.
I get asked that question probably 100 times a day. Hey, what are the interest rates? And
Yeah.
But a lot of times I will. I always I probably was one of the first people to find the Mortgage News Daily app and screenshot that app and post hey, here's a rough idea what the interest rates are. I see people do that all across the country now. It just rolled over to where, agents do it and anybody does it. It's open information. Why not? Go check it out. It's mortgagenewsdaily.com. It's an app too. You can download on your phone if you're really that aggressive into looking at interest rates every day like I am. But it does tell you what the interest rates are. You can even go back and look at historical numbers as far as interest rates go. And so, I kind of keep my finger on the pulse with that. But it's going to differ for every client and different companies and all that stuff.
What are you foreseeing as far as this the interest rate?
It's funny because I remember it was January of 2022, I was down in Disney and interest rates jumped up 0.5 point. And at that time, they were ridiculously low. But that was kind of the beginning to the end, where interest rates just kept on climbing and climbing. But even at that time, it's like, all right, well, they jumped up, but they'll come back down. They'll jump up, but they'll come back down. Well, now we're still sitting at over 7%. We get as high as like 8.25% at one point a little while last year. And so, it's hard to say what's going to happen. We've been sitting so high for a while.
What's the biggest provocation though for I'm not an economist, but so what is, why is it so static right now? Are there reasons that you can point to or no?
I feel like right now it's so, like, people are confused as to why they're still so high. Like, the bond market is something that they track all the time, but not everything is correlating at a given time right now, so people are just not really sure. They will eventually come back down. It's just the fact that nobody has a crystal ball, and nobody knows when that's going to happen. Everybody thought it was going to happen once the election happened. People are trying to look at trends and seasons and all that stuff, and just realistically, nobody knows. So you just have to, what I tell everybody is, figure out what your budget is, figure out what your comfort zone is for the cash to close. Have that stuff ready to go. But then go out there and look for a house in the location that you want to be in. And if you happen to see it and you're comfortable with the numbers, then buy the house. If in the future the interest rates go down, then that's when we could refinance and save some money.
Right.
And when the interest rates go down, it's expected that home values are expected to go up even higher, faster. So therefore, they're going to have even more equity in their property. So people shouldn't be hesitating on buying a house if they qualify, if they are comfortable with their money that they have saved up, and they find the right house that they like. Because, if interest rates go down anytime soon, then that's where there's going to be more buyers in the market. There's going to be more demand, and then you're going to be seeing situations where people are doing highest and best offers or waiving inspections and appraisals again, and they could be losing equity at that point.
Right, that was a crazy time.
So, how important is a credit score when applying for a mortgage?
Well, credit score, I want to say is like half the battle, right?
Yeah.
If you have a 400 credit score, you can make $1 million a year and have a ton of money in the bank, but,
Right.
there's not a lot of banks that will lend you with a 400 credit score. But at the same time, too, I am seeing that over the years, people are doing better with their credit score. Mm-hmm. With all the different apps out there where people are tracking their credit score, seeing what bills they have, paying their bills, getting like free suggestions on their credit report based on the apps and everything, I'm seeing that credit isn't normally something that's holding somebody back from buying a house right now. Like, you typically need, I'd say for a decent credit score, like 620 or higher. Mm-hmm. We have programs that go all the way down to 500 credit score. So that's really great. But at the same time, too, most people are above the 620 mark.
Yeah. And what I think's really cool, with a tool that you have to offer is you have Rhode Island Housing underwriters in your office, right?
Yep.
So explain a little bit to the viewers what that is, and what is Rhode Island Housing, and what do they offer?
Yeah, so it's really great. Rhode Island Housing is a bond program. So just like any state in the country, if you're looking, there's normally a bond product out there within the state. So Mass Housing, Connecticut Housing, Rhode Island Housing, where they have some sort of down payment assistance program. Right. And so Rhode Island Housing has a program called the 15K DPA, where you can borrow the $15,000 towards your down payment and your closing costs. And you're borrowing that money at 0% interest. Okay. So I always tell people you're not getting this money for free. You're borrowing it for free. But whenever you sell or refinance a property, you have to pay back that $15,000. So it is a great tool right now. There's also an extra assistance program where they give you $20,000 towards the down payment and closing costs. That's borrowed at the same rate as the first loan, right? So the first one on an FHA, Rhode Island Housing today is 6.5%. So you're borrowing that money at 6.5% over 15 years. And so that would come out to about like $180 a month as far as that additional monthly payment if you're borrowing the full $20,000. So those are great programs that they offer. As far as your question with, how we do with Rhode Island Housing, so we're the number 2 lender in the state with Rhode Island.
What's up, everyone? So when I'm not podcasting, I'm in real estate. I'm helping people buy homes. And when people buy homes, they got to get a home inspection. So I have someone I like and trust and use and refer to my clients. That's House Doctor Home Inspections. You can find them pretty much anywhere. They cover Connecticut, Mass, and Rhode Island. You can give them a call. Mike will always answer the phone. It's 401-597-0050. That's House Doctor Home Inspections. You can find them on Instagram, Facebook, website, whatever it is. Thanks, Mike, over at House Doctor Home Inspections. Back to the show.
On housing, and big part of what we do is we actually are able to do the Rhode Island housing law in-house, which means that we don't have to send the file to Rhode Island housing for a second underwrite. So you don't have a second underwriter who's normally going to look at all your information again and could potentially put on additional conditions to your loan file of extra documents that you might need. And so it just saves time, really. Like, we can close a Rhode Island housing loan in 21 days or less, and it just makes the process a lot easier. You know, anytime that another person has to open up your file and review it, that could potentially add more time, because there's a million variables in any given loan program or file.
What are some of the biggest red flags you see that come up during a transaction when they're already pending and something comes up?
That one I didn't know I was going to get today. I didn't see that question.
It's all right. We can cut. You can
Red flags. I would say
appraisal stuff, buying, opening new credit card.
I would say the path to success when it comes down to getting a mortgage nowadays, and if you want to close on your house quickly and easily, is communication. And that sounds so basic, but at the same time, and I tell this when I have that loan application review meeting, if our processor is asking for an updated bank statement, and let's say it's not going to come out till next week, just reply back an email. Hey, I have this, and this as far as the things that you're asking for. That bank statement that you're asking for is not going to be available till next week, but I'll get it to you as soon as it comes out. That communication is helpful, because if you just get us items 3 out of 4, but then you don't tell us what you're thinking, then we don't know. Maybe you just missed that one, or maybe you don't want to show us that because you spent all the money at the casino or something. Right. So I think that communication is really big. If you're getting a pay raise, it's going to help us. And it could help us or it could hurt us. It could help out as far as how much you get approved for if you get a pay raise in the middle of the process. But it could also hurt if it puts you over an income limit of a loan program that we're using with, like, say, Rhode Island housing or something. So having proactive communication with the lender is really important, so that way we know what you're thinking and what's going on, because we don't want to be sitting there waiting for documents. And, that time does kind of kill. Like, how many times have you had a deal where how come we're just finding out about this in the 11th hour?
Right.
It's normally because the lender just found out about it in the 10th hour, because we've asked for stuff over and over again, and then, it's sometimes things are just ignored, and they're only answering 3 out of the 4 questions. So that communication is absolutely paramount when it comes down to getting a mortgage.
Very good. What is your best piece of financial advice for someone under 30?
That's a good question. I would say it still kind of goes on to that acting as if when it comes down to that monthly payment portion. If you want to buy a house one day, you can't be budgeting for a $1,000 a month rent payment. You have to be budgeting for more. And so I think if people are expecting to buy a house, it's probably going to cost them more money. So they should almost be acting as if they're putting more money towards a house or a mortgage right from the get-go, whether they have roommates in college or something. They automatically just start getting involved with putting money aside and budgeting. It's harder to do, but if they start to have that mindset right from the get-go, it's going to be really helpful.
It's a premature kid.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it, right?
So, John, there's also a lot of misconceptions as a realtor when I see, like, FHA loans come across the offer table, or a VA loan. And, kind of just talk about those products, maybe clear up in the air, like, the misconceptions and myths you heard.
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll see a listing online and it's won't pass FHA. And
what does that mean?
So well, let me ask, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So what that means to me, the property probably has peeling paint or broken windows or something that would give an issue.
So, a lot of agents, especially if they've been doing this for a long time, when the market crashed in 2008, the guidelines for, the properties was pretty tight, and I think that's where they kind of get stuck into that game of, oh, this isn't going to pass FHA, it's going to be a deal breaker, it's not ever going to work. But nowadays, I've noticed that appraisers, yes, they are trained and licensed to do the government-insured loans like FHA and VA loans, where you can't have chipping paint, you can't have broken windows, you can't have any safety hazards. But at the same time, too, they're not, I don't want to say they're not as strict, but they're not, they'll take the picture, they'll send it to the underwriter, and the underwriter has to look at it, and if it has to get fixed, it has to get fixed. But I see that only really adding time to the process, but I don't see it really blowing up a deal. Like, are you going to let a client walk away from a house just because a fence needs to be painted or there's a broken window? No.
There's all I would be that.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before plenty of times where, I actually just had one in Lowell, Massachusetts where it was actually a conventional loan, and on the appraisal, there was a hole in the deck, like the back patio, and there was just like a couple of boards missing. It was actually holes in it. And it was a safety issue. So, the appraiser had to flag it, and it had to get fixed. And it was actually the buyer that went out there and fixed it. The sellers were going through a divorce, and they weren't getting along. And it was like, all right, well, I'm going to just tear this thing down. And anyway, once it closed, this is what I have to do. This is what he did. So I always say that I like work with the deal makers, not the deal breakers. And so usually people will come to find a way to make the deal work. And if it's just going out there painting some chipped paint or whatever, they're going to find a way to make it happen.
Now, do the appraisers require a contractor to do this stuff, or they don't really care?
They are going to go out there and re-inspect to make sure it's done. Depending on what the work is important, right? So if it's like a structural issue, then that's where you're going to need to find a structural engineer. Still don't know what structural looks like, but
But paint's kind of fair.
Yeah, somebody that's licensed to go do it. If it's lead paint, then they need to be a certified lead painter, things like that. But most of the time, it's going to be stuff that is going to be cosmetic that can be fixed. If it's something big enough, then that's where the loan would normally have to get turned into like a renovation loan. Mm-hmm. And so renovation loan, I think we're going to start to see more of these as, the loan programs change a little bit. So like the FHA 203K renovation loan, that's a pretty common product name. So the FHA 203K Limited, the max renovation amount for the Limited used to be $35,000. Just this year, it jumped up to $75,000. Okay, and so there's two different FHA renovation loan programs, the Limited and the Standard. The Limited is capped at how much you could do, and it also can't consist of moving any load-bearing walls. The Standard program, you could basically knock down a house as long as you leave one wall up and then start all over again. The caveat, though, is you need a HUD consultant on that FHA 203K Standard. So you need to have another party in a cumbersome process as it is, and that's what people typically want to avoid. They want to have to pay for the additional cost. They don't want to have another third party coming in who's typically working on behalf of the bank and the lender and the client to make sure that they're getting a fair deal. But that's just one extra, person in the pot. So therefore, you want to go with the limiteds, and a lot of that stuff can get taken care of. So even if it was a lot of chipping paint, or if it was a chipping paint, broken window, and a hole in the floor, all that stuff can be taken care of with that 203K Limited. And that money gets rolled into the total loan amount, and it's not coming out of the client's pocket. Mm-hmm. So it's a big help on that case.
Yeah, where do you see the mortgage industry going in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I don't know. I'm still trying to find that crystal ball.
Yeah.
But I would say it really almost depends on what interest rates do. The interest rates being up this high over the last 10 years, we'll call this high. Over the last 30 years, this is pretty much average. But this has changed the industry in a way to where there's not a lot of call centers out there right now.
What's going on, everyone? So when I'm not podcasting, I'm in real estate, and there's a lot of times where I need to, refer out an excavator, someone to do clean outs, gravel, grading, digging, stuff like that, junk removal. So if any of you ever need any of that type of work taken care of, reach out to Tom at Legacy Excavating at 401-227-5399. Reach out to Tom. He'll take care of you. Back to the show.
You probably haven't gotten a lot of mail as far as mortgage banks calling you, acting like they're me, telling you that they could sell you a mortgage or refinance now and all that stuff. And a lot of people have been laid off, and they've been getting out of the industry. And so if interest rates continue to go this way, there'll be a lot more attrition, and a lot of people out of the industry but then there'll be people still doing mortgages. If interest rates go down, we're going to basically be back to where we were at 5 years ago, where there'll be a lot of people calling, and, you know, people went from car sales back into the mortgage industry. We'll see that happen again, to where the industry is just still going to be here, and people will be coming out of the woodwork to meet a loan officer at that point. But other than that, it's really, I think it's just still going to be a lot of the same.
Yeah.
You know, people trying to help people buy houses and refinance people to help them save money when they can.
Yeah. What's one of the things you love most about being a loan officer?
Well, I think it's always cool to see people, you know, get their keys and be part of that moment. But I will say that initial mortgage consultation, and you see that the people get the good understanding of the numbers, and it's a lot better than what they thought, and you feel that weight melt off their shoulders. I think that's one of the coolest things. And it took me a while to realize that. But, you know, when you have that, you know, that first-time home buyer that just doesn't understand the process, they've never had anybody else explain it to them, they have no clue anything about it, and, you know, once you make it digestible to them and they understand, and then they get excited about the process, that's, I almost say that almost beats people getting the keys. And I think the reason why I say that too is when the day of closing, they care about signing the documents, getting the keys. They're already moved on at that point. But like, I think that first sight of belief for them is where I see that the pre-approval stage that makes it really cool and exciting.
So that's cool. Like you're really, you know, you're an educator. You're really.
I really enjoy educating people. But I've taught classes for around housing, and, you know, we've done our own home buyer classes and stuff, and I think that magic in the home buyer class is the actual, when you see somebody like have like an aha moment and actually stop to write it down. And then, you know, you could tell that it stuck with them, and that they realize that that's a valuable piece of information. So you know that you're doing your job at that point.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Want to ask the wrap-up questions?
All right, we have 3 wrap-up questions. Number 1, what's the best cup of coffee in Rhode Island?
Best cup of coffee in Rhode Island? Man, I didn't see this.
Yeah, these aren't on here.
There's it in our.
Could be any.
I really could, but I used to drink a lot of coffee, and then I stopped. I just drink water most of the time. Man, I'm trying to come up with a good one.
Are you a Dunkin' guy?
Now, I would say, if anything, I've been doing more Coffee Connection, and, you know, when I do just go off the rails and have like a coffee, I'll do a large hazelnut large ice hazelnut with regular cream and sugar from Coffee Connection.
Yeah.
They do a good
Yeah,
balance.
like you, right? A little bit.
No.
No?
Like a medium ice, like banana hazelnut with almond milk only or something like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So before I quit drinking coffee, I would fill up my 24-ounce Tervis with straight black coffee once before I left the house. And then I'd drink it again before I got to the office, and then fill it up again when I got to the office. All black coffee. Nice. So, not normally one for sweet coffee, but every once in a while I'm like, you know what, I want a coffee. But, you know, I'll just, normally coffee time.
And now, in Rhode Island, what is your favorite restaurant?
Oh, this one's going to hurt. Well, actually, so, I guess I could, favorite seafood restaurant would have been Matunic Oyster Bar.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's sad.
And a lot, so back when I was on the submarine, I used to get the Rhode Island Monthlies. And I remember reading an article about Perry Rossa, the owner of Matunic Oyster Bar, and how he ended up getting grants from URI to open up the oyster beds. And way back when I was a kid, my mother lived down in Matunic, and we used to go and get clams. We used to go quahog it. And so all right in that spot where he opened up the restaurant. And before it was Matunic Oyster Bar, it was called The Seagull. It was an old restaurant. We used to go there every once in a while. And, you know, it was really great to see everything that Perry's done. And I definitely don't think he's done. I think that...
No, I doubt it.
This is just an opportunity to grow even more. Like, that guy, he's going to find a way to make it happen. So I give a lot of credit to him and all the employees at Matunic Oyster Bar. They're going to come back even better. Best restaurant in Providence, I'd say Cov.
Yeah,
I think you knew I was going to say that.
Yeah, sure.
Answer.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Have you been there, Robbie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been there for over 30 years. It's, you know, right in the hub of Jewelry District in Providence. And, you know, the food's always amazing. The atmosphere is always great. So I think you know I was going to say that one.
And then you got a Saturday with no responsibilities. How do you spend it?
Okay.
In the summer.
Yep, in the summer. So, man, I actually say I had a pretty good this Saturday, to where went down to Fort Adams in Newport, and they had the Operation Stand Down, the boots on the ground. So it was cool to see the boots there for Memorial Day and pay tribute there. But overall, it was a cool little excursion to go through Fort Adams, which a lot of Rhode Islanders don't do. And so Fort Adams is a really interesting fort. And then on the way back from Newport, I actually went over to Fort Wetherall. Have you ever been to Fort Wetherall?
Yes.
So that's a really cool World War I and World War II fort that is now mostly covered in graffiti. And they took out the guns, obviously. But you can walk around there with the girls and everything. And it's just a nice day. You're right on the water. And so then...
there's a cliff there, right?
Yeah. There's
my brother used to dive off that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like snorkeling and so it's a really cool spot. So I like to be a tourist in my own state.
That's cool.
And explore kind of like what nature's taking over on that stuff. And so then go out to dinner. We're gonna go out to dinner on Saturday. I don't know. We get some clam cakes and chowder. I think so.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, that's a Rhode Island summer weekend. Maybe the beach too.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, John. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
All good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having me.